I've mentioned before, there's one church in particular that has been fined almost $2 million. Every time they meet, they get another fine. The pastor personally has been fined $50,000. There's another church in California that not only has the church and the pastor been fined, but all the members of the congregation have been named in the lawsuit. And the court has told them, if you show up, you're going to be fined as well. You probably know there's a pastor in Canada that was arrested recently for just having church, for not forsaking the assembling together with believers. And he's in jail without bail. They're not going to let him out of jail until his court date. He's got to stay in jail till May. He's just doing what we're doing here, just meeting together. So there's tremendous pressure put on these churches by the authority, by the government. There's pressure from authority to try to dissuade them from meeting together. And here for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego, they know if we disobey this, we are inviting the wrath of Nebuchadnezzar against us. So there's the pressure that comes from the government, the authority. There's also the pressure of conformity. The pressure of conformity. Look at verse 7. So at that time, notice, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, and the lyre, and symphony with all kinds of music, look what it says. All the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. When the orchestra started, all the people fell down and worshipped the gold image except Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego. They're the only three. All the other government employees, they went along with the order. Only these three refused to participate. So 3 out of 300,000. And in a situation like that, there is tremendous pressure to conform. You know, it's difficult to be the only person who refuses to bow down. Especially today, especially in the culture that we live in today. In Romans chapter 12, verse 2 tells us to not be conformed to this world. The world is always applying pressure and pressing against us to try to get us to conform. In a situation like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego were in, you might easily convince yourself, well, it's just easier to go along with it. It's just easier to bow down. Even though you totally disagree with it, it's just easier to keep your mouth shut, not say anything, and just bow down and move on. If you just bow down like everyone else, you don't make any trouble for yourself. You're not going to jeopardize your career. It's easier. It's safer. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego could have just bowed down and avoided all of this trouble and kept their jobs and their comfortable lives and all the things that they were enjoying. They could have done that. Maybe even some co-workers were encouraging them to just bow down and saying, what's the big deal? Just do it. Just bow down. The king's not asking you to forsake your God and your beliefs. He's just asking you to bow down once for one song. Why is this a problem for you? No one else has a problem with it. None of the other Hebrew believers that are here have a problem with it. They don't see it as a conflict with their faith. It's just you three that think this is in conflict with what you believe. Again, if you stand up for Christ, you'll probably stand alone. You may be the only one at your school who takes a stand for Christ. You may be the only one in your company that takes a stand for Christ. And so there's this pressure from the government authority. There's pressure to conform like everyone else. Verse 8 says, "Therefore at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. And they spoke and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, 'O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the gold image, and whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. But there are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up.'" So there were some other government officials that were at this dedication who saw that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego did not bow down, and they brought this accusation to the king. Now, just the fact that these Chaldeans, as they're called here, just the fact that they noticed that these three did not bow down tells us they were watching to see if they would bow down. And they didn't have their noses planted in the dirt. They're watching out of the corner of their eye. It's kind of like when you have, small children and you pray together, and then one of the kids says, "Johnny had his eyes open during the prayer." Well, how did you know Johnny had his eyes open during the prayer unless you had your eyes open during the prayer? Well, how do they know these three weren't bowed down unless they're watching?